Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. Serious, Night Watchman of Reddit, what is the creepiest situation you've been in on shift? I have a mild one. Last year I worked as night shift security at this place called the Desert Museum, which is essentially a zoo and botanical garden that showcases the different life found in the Sonoran Desert. It's a phenomenal place BTW, highly recommend a visit if you find yourself in Tucson, Arizona. So towards the end of closing time all the employees leave and I lock the whole place up, including the main gates into the place. Eventually later in the night I have to go open up the gate for the custodians to leave, and while I was waiting I got bored and started playing with my flashlight. And keep in mind, this place is in the middle of nowhere with a new moon, everything is pitch black. I worked a security gig in an abandoned hotel, which sat directly on the river. When the rooms had balconies, they would hang out over the water. The hotel had closed down and had been stripped bare by the owners. I'm sitting in the office, and I hear a creak. 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 From left to right on the floor above me. The hotel was wood frame and creaked like a house when someone walked around. This sounded exactly like someone walking the hall on the floor directly above the office. I go up to the next level and into the hall. The hotel itself was only 4 floors high, but long. The hall was bare walls, rooms with no doors, and only a single dim light bulb hanging from the ceiling in the middle of the hall. I have seen my share of horror movies, and know this can only be trouble, but I start walking down the hall anyway. After all, it's my job to keep people out. I get about quarter way down the hall, and I hear rustling coming from a room. I draw my mag light, one of the 3C cell ones, and get ready to use it. I slowly peek into the room and discover that it's the wind blowing in from the river and moving a curtain. Now freaked, I start checking the other floors and find nothing, but I know someone is in the building. I make my way back down to the ground floor, still finding nothing, and go into the old ballroom. It's a wide open space, resembling this, and I start walking through it. Out of the corner of my eye, I see someone moving, so I turn and shine my light on them, ready to defend myself. That's when I realized that it was my reflection in a broken mirror on the wall. After that, I noped the hell out of there and spent the rest of the night in my car in the parking lot. About 2 weeks after that, the place burned down. After all this time, I'm still convinced that someone was in the building, but I never found any evidence that there was. I worked in an abandoned hospital for a while and it was full of WTF it seemed every damn night. Everything had logical explanations, but working in there alone at night was a trip. First, the doors in the stairwells had gas piston hinges that wouldn't really close the door and slowly leak out. You get the other end of the hallway and the stairwell door would slam loudly as if someone slammed the door closed. Took me a week to figure out the pattern of which doors did it. The elevators were somehow rigged together so you would go from one floor to the next, and when the door opened, the elevator across the hall or next to you would be closing like you just missed someone getting in. This SHT was totally random. I once turned on the PA system with a radio next to it so I could have music throughout the building. I thought I was clever till it turned itself off when I was in another part of the building. Had an auto timeout switch. I used to work at City Hall a few years ago as a security guard. There were abandoned jail cells in the basement that haven't been used in years. Part of my duties was to patrol them for any squatters. It was probably my second time patrolling alone and things started to get really effing weird. The hallway was lit with light bulbs hanging from the ceiling. I was walking past the 4th column of cells when the lights went out. I turned my flashlight on and walked back towards the light switch. Right when I was about to turn them back on, the lights flickered on again. I effing ran with my flashlight on straight toward the other end of the hallway. I reached the end and ran up to my workstation. I then called my supervisor and asked him if there were any electrical issues that have been reported. He said no. Being outside on a dark, windy night. I work at a power plant, then there's the whistling and moaning sound the wind makes as it blows through. Couple that with coyotes howling in the woods nearby and you've got yourself a nice basket of nope. Being out in that is what I get paid for though, so off I go. I used to work as a night watchman on a large property. Not just a big building, but a large surrounding property as well. Probably 50 acres. Well, this property was not in the best of areas. It was kind of secluded, but had a subdivision nearby. Anyways, it had a really long driveway that was gated. One night I start my rounds by walking out the front door of the place, which was all lit up. As soon as I lock the door behind me and take a step, I hear a woman's voice scream, "Oh my God, somebody please help me." Up at the end of the driveway, they responded with multiple police cars and even a helicopter. They found absolutely nothing. I still think it could have been someone trying to lure me out there. I was a night shift security guard at a hospital when I was 20. This was a relatively nice suburban hospital, no trauma unit, so there wasn't a lot going on at night. We made rounds and occasionally helped to strap angry people down in the ER. Mostly, we checked people into the morgue. There was a logbook that had to be signed by the guard and the nurse, and paperwork that had to be filed for every corpse that came downstairs. The morgue was really small. A freezer that had room for maybe 2 gurneys and 1 table for bodies in the main room. Most had parts that I couldn't identify. One was full of eyeballs, seriously. I have no idea what they were for. One night I got a call over the radio that a body was headed downstairs. I went to meet the nurse and saw she was carrying a small blanket. Stillborn. We went into the morgue and she laid the bundle down on the table, unwrapping the blanket and revealing a tiny, discolored baby. Corpses are unnerving in their stillness. Bodies move, breath flows, muscles twitch. But not the dead. Not this baby. I stood there with it for a good 10 minutes, my eyes locked to it, waiting for the nurse to return with the papers. Part of the anxiety was the inevitable horror movie playing in my head, where the baby opens its eyes and looks at me. But part of it was just the uncomfortable confrontation with death I was having. I was in Afghanistan doing a 3-day mission in a valley, Dagab, we have never been in. We had no intel and nobody to let us in on the situation. Think of this as going in dry. We were just there to determine whether or not there was a threat for future supply routes. It still had all the rooms, but the face of this building was gone. There were still pieces of wall left which we basically hid behind to pull surveillance. So a few days go by and we see nothing. Our intel has nothing new to report. Our interpreters are quiet. This is about 2 a.m. I am pulling guard while everyone else is getting ready to leave. I have a thermoscope and NVOs. Out of nowhere, I see about 100 people gathering into a mass across the valley and call it in. We stay put. We all pull out our NVOs and try to figure out if this is just some religious crap or another ambush. We had been in the area for too long and local fighters had just enough time to gather everyone up to try and overtake us. We were a small special group. We realized we were outnumbered and immediately called in air support. The French owned the battle space at the time and they had Tiger Heelys there within minutes. We are so outnumbered that fighting to the death was the only way out. The Heelys came out of the darkness and literally obliterated everything. Holy f***ing shit. The sound, the smell, the sight. Unfucking real. Body parts flying everywhere. When looking at this SHT through thermal optics or NVGs it looks like rain. So much blood, unreal, scariest night of my life. Fob Morales Fraser, Kapisa Province, Afghanistan. OF 10. There's a building my company guards that's been abandoned for years. We go in to check and make sure that it's not been vandalized, broken into, you know. Well, I don't really know when it all started because I haven't been working there for a long time, but a lot of the other guards get spooked in there. 9 dense people get a full body chill in the same spot. I've heard feet shuffling up behind me, so have others. I've heard coughing. I've had something touch my back. Someone heard something run up behind him and whisper hi. Lots of instances of kids giggling and running around. But if you go inside and state hey, I'm not gonna bother you if you don't bother me. I'm just checking things out. It'll leave you alone. One night one of our guards felt something watching him, so he turned around and snapped a few pictures. You can see 3 figures. In college, I worked as a police cadet. We didn't have a ton of functions, but handled things like crowd control at campus events, student police outreach, etc. Our biggest duty involved providing night escorts to students and faculty who didn't feel safe. As per everything in college, this started to become abused as a lazy man's taxi. We weren't armed, and only had a radio, so not really sure we would have prevented an assault anyway, but whatever. This particular school also had a primate research division that was separate from the rest of the campus. It was down a long, unlit road through the woods. During the day, no sweat. At night, not good. That said, even as a bio major, and working night security, I never met anyone who actually worked there. Anyway, I'm on the clock one night and get the call to go do an escort at the Monkey Building. I wasn't that creeped out by the place, it was just a haul to get out there. So, out I go, past the first set of gates, and down the road through the woods. On the way, it dawns on me for the first time that it's the middle of the goddamn night. It just makes the whole thing seem like a monkey-based Blair Witch. Finally, unmolested, I made it to the final perimeter fence around the monkey lab. I radio in that I'm on scene and trying to make contact with the escort appointment. I buzz the intercom, and a woman says she'll be right out, like somehow nobody would be able to scale this thing, so why even bother? Anyway, I see this woman step out of the building and look my way. I'm standing under a light and wave, and she freezes for a few seconds. Just as I'm starting to wonder what the FCK is up, she starts heading my way. Where is it? What do you mean we're walking? You're a student? Why didn't they send a cruiser? All of this without opening the gate. I'm starting to get pissed because it's cold, and it seems like she's just lazy and didn't want to walk back to campus. But she also seemed really nervous. Either way, one of us was getting nervous. Finally, punches in her code on the other side of the fence, and it rolls open enough for her to come out, then closes. She mentions that if we're walking, we really should get moving. I radio in that I've made contact, and when I turn around, she's like 100 yards down the road at a f-king clip. As I caught up to her, something started crashing around in the woods. Not right off the road, but deeper in the woods. She somehow starts walking even faster, and I'm trying to point my bobbing light at the noise. Can't see anything, just more Blair Witch shit, now improved with noises. The crunching followed us, and she looked concerned. I kept pointing the light into the forest, and just as we were about to get to the main road, saw what can only be described as a vaguely monkey-shaped shadow. I was terrified. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.